Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've been enjoying the event so far. Awesome. I'm really excited to move to the next session of the Global Hospitality Education Expo. And we're doing a really interesting panel discussion with some fantastic industry speakers. Let me start with the lady on my left. I believe many of you met her earlier today, Chef Urvika Kanoi. She's the chef and founder of the Daily Café and Café Duco. And earlier today, she just conducted a culinary masterclass, and she's kind of joining us for the panel as well. And then we have Yash Bhanage. He's the co-founder of Hungering Hospitality. So it's a brand that owns some really iconic establishments in our city. So you have the Bombay Canteen, O Pedro, the Bombay Sweet Shop, and their latest venture is Veronica's, which is a sandwich and deli outlet. So firstly, let me thank you both for being here. We're absolutely delighted, and just there for a second, I went through like a frozen moment, but I'm glad I recovered. So thank you so much for being here. Yeah. Awesome. I thought, I'll start with a very basic rudimentary question as to what attracted you to, join the industry and build a career in this place.
So my journey started, makes me like really old. I always go back to, I was born in 86 plus 20 years. So mine started in 2004. I grew up in Pune, and my father's actually a neurosurgeon and my mother's an architect. And I'm the younger of two, and my brother is just 1 year older. And he decided not to do medicine, and he became a chemical engineer. So there was this expectation on me to become a doctor without understanding that my intellectual capacity wasn't great enough. I don't know, at that point, this was just when internet was penetrating India, so we didn't have the wealth of information that students have today. I was given a career book saying what are the careers in the next 10 years that will be really going higher, and hotel management was one of them. So I honestly hadn't done much research, and at that point I gave my entrance exam and got into IHM Goa. So that was a 3-year bachelor's course in hotel administration. I graduated, I was 20 years old, I did this from Goa. I moved to Bombay. My first job was being a waiter at the Grand Hyatt. I did that for 3 years. And it was 3 years that taught me a phenomenal lot about the industry. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And that's where my foray into this started. And then I went to Cornell to do my master's. So that's just a quick.
What about you?
So I think I spoke a little bit about it in my session. But I was never meant to get into food, never meant to become a chef. Always dreamt of becoming a film director. All things Bollywood, really want to do hardcore masala movies. That was what I ate, dreamt, slept. But then I went to film school and I went to La Salle, which is in Singapore. And a year and a half later, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing because I constantly think about food. Where am I eating? Which restaurant am I saving up for? So people are like going and investing in like fancy equipment, and they're doing these small specialized courses which make the camera work better, which makes the story writing better. And I'm like, ye Michelin star restaurant hai, isme khana hai. So we have to save for so many days. This hawker center I want to check out, this bar I want to go to. And not only that, I was like, you have like this one cook who you're going to tell them for everything to cook for you, like in the dorm. So that started happening, and I just dropped out. A year and a half later, I was like, no, I don't think I'm following the correct passion. And I went to LCB and I studied. I also worked illegally over there. My visa didn't allow it, but a chef really took me under his wing and taught me everything. So then I realized I am not turning back from this industry. I love being in a commercial kitchen and at the pass. So being in the restaurant, in the kitchen, on the pass was my favorite thing. I think till date, that's my favorite place to be. So like after that, I came back to India and then I started interning. I interned at the table. Chef Alex taught me a lot as well at that time. And then I went back to my hometown and I started my first restaurant.
Awesome. And in both your cases, you all have established more than just one brand, one outlet. Urvika, in your case, the Daily Cafe is an iconic place in Kolkata, and now you've launched Café Duco. I remember us speaking earlier, and you're looking at maybe taking the Duco brand to more places, to more locations. And Yash, in your case, you've got some really fantastic outlets as part of the Hunger Inc. Belt. So you have Bombay Canteen. I've been fortunate to eat at Bombay Canteen and O Pedro. Love the food, love the ambience, and really looking forward to going to Veronica's. And I was also happy to sample stuff at the Bombay Sweet Shop. So I want both of you to answer this in turn, but I wanted to ask you, what really do you look at when you're starting a new venture? So let's say you start a new venture, you want it to succeed. So what are the things that you really pay attention to?
Honestly, the first thing, like I've made like tons of mistakes, but I think I really see the financials before I start a new place. It all has to make sense eventually, be it like real estate or how much am I ready to invest in the project, who is investing, what are the returns going to be. And of course, the gap in the market. Am I doing a new cuisine that is filling that gap? Am I doing something that I'm comfortable with? When I started Daily, I did something that Calcutta didn't have. So it accepted it with open arms and gave a lot of support. Even when Duco was happening in Bombay, I didn't see too many places serving authentic Mexican food. So I think as a chef, just what my strengths are, I like to play to that and give the consumer something that they would really enjoy.
Yeah, just to add to that, like for us, Hungering started 9 years ago, right? So it's easier to now, in hindsight, say, we looked at this, we looked at that. But like for me, right after Cornell, when I finished my 1 year's master's course, I realized that hospitality in India, which we call as food and beverage service, was very different to where the rest of the world was. So I started bartending in Chicago. And I did that for a good year. And the same company I was working for then moved me to Singapore, where I was running a jazz bar. That jazz bar shut after a year and a half because clearly I wasn't doing my job well. I became a poolside manager after that. So I used to be out in the heat handing out towels and water to people. And like literally with that company, I must have worked in like 17 restaurants. And over the period of time, so Samir, who's my co-founder, he was in New York, he was working in restaurants, and I was in Singapore. And we had reached that age where there was a certain amount of confidence that we were enjoying F&B service, we were enjoying being part of restaurants, but it was time we did something on our own and started putting the same amount of effort for ourselves. So when he was in New York, I was in Singapore, one of the things we were seeing was how countries were so proud of their own cuisines and they were looking inward, and there was a certain research going into indigenous ingredients and how are you celebrating them? How do you celebrate your own country's hospitality, especially in Southeast Asia? And so that's where when we came to India first time, was 2013, just to because both of us are not from Bombay. He's from Delhi, I'm from Pune. So we started just eating out at restaurants, and we both had jobs, so we had to go back. But one of the key things we saw is this India's fascination with continental food, right? You go outside India and you ask someone what continental cuisine is. There is no cuisine as continental, right? And every menu we saw at restaurants was so fascinated with a pizza burger thing, but at the same time there was Indian Chinese on the menu, and then there was Indian food on the menu. So there's no core philosophy to what restaurants were trying to do, and our whole thing was we wanted to celebrate the India of today. So that is what we said in 2013. We actually opened Bombay Canteen only in 2015, because to what she said is you need to find the right real estate at the right rent. None of us can afford to buy real estate. None of our parents should ever give us money to be investing in a restaurant. That's the worst decision ever. So that's when we found this space in Kamla Mills. Kamla Mills at that point was not known to anyone. Toddy Mills, where Cafe Zoe used to be, Blue Frog used to be, was the more prominent location. And we were quite confident that we'll take something on the opposite side of the road, because one, if we keep our rent low, we can create an approachable, accessible product and experience. And people will come to us more often instead of creating an expensive fine dining restaurant. So for us, what differentiated Bombay Canteen since day one is both of us as founders had worked our way up through the industry, like understanding what service meant, understanding how to make the right drink. But at the same time, then we had Chef Lloyd, who was a co-founder as well, who was much more mature. He was a chef in the US and he joined us. So we had the perfect combination to be opening that restaurant, right? Knowing that what your strengths are and you need someone on the other side handling it. So yeah, three of us, we opened Bombay Canteen 2015 and just the heartwarming response to it. And honestly, other than looking at the rent, food cost, labor cost, the basics, after that as a founder, you are just fixing everything that needs to be fixed. There's a pipe that breaks, there's a flush that's not working, there's an AC that's tripping. I feel my life hasn't changed since then, just that it's multiplied 8x times. So, but after that, you just keep learning. So we opened Opedro 2 years later. We opened Bombay Sweet Shop 7 days before the lockdown. Lockdown bankrupted all of us, right? So I feel for us, like all of us as hospitality people have literally have to start again post 2021. But after that, thankfully, we've opened Veronica's. We also have an online food magazine called Enthu Cutlet. But for us, our soul has always been like, how do you create approachable and accessible experiences for everyone? But at the core of it, they should be profitable from day one, not to invest blind money into it.
Some really good points. And if I could, I was listening to both of you very intently. And there are a couple of points that I picked up. One is that it's so important to work in the industry and get experience before you start your own venture. Another thing that I picked up is paying attention to the financials is equally important. It's not just about running a business. You need to do it profitably. If you're not profitable, no matter how much passion you pour into your venture, you're not really going to sustain it. And true to that, you see sometimes restaurants open up in a specific neighborhood, and 6 months later, it shutters down, and the place is getting renovated for the next outlet that's actually coming up. So doing it profitably is so important. Can you maybe relate an experience which was something you never anticipated or something that totally took you out of gear, and how you kind of how did you overcome that challenge?
I think it was my first restaurant shutting down. I think I shut down with it when it happened. Because when we launched it, it was called Bodega Cantina. It was first of its kind. First of Calcutta's drinking, eating place where you could eat something apart from nostalgic food. Apart from like Indo-Chinese and all, we did Latin American food, which is the food I enjoy the most to cook. And it was doing really well. And year one was like, where you're just flying. It was just that. Seasonal menus doing very well, everything going good. And then demonetization hit. And in Calcutta, for some reason, sales dropped to 0. So bad that it happened in November. November, I think what I remember, November, December, whatever, that was fine. But January onwards, the market was dry. And people, not only did the APC drop, we just didn't see enough customers coming in. And my investor, it was his first ever investment, not only in the F&B industry, but just overall. He was not ready to wait because his returns for the first year had been so good. He was used to a certain something. And even though we weren't doing terribly, he decided to pull the plug on it. And I really couldn't do much about that. So when that shut down, I think it sort of broke my confidence. And I was like, okay, so nothing is ever going to work because something or the other will always happen. I actually went back to learn again. And I went and did a couple of more courses within my, I learned a little more. And I started at another restaurant. And I just put myself, a little out there in terms of learning again, gaining some more experience, just refreshing my mind and coming back. And after that, I decided to work solo. I said, whatever I'm going to do solo. It took a lot of time to actually take that step because like he said, our parents should never give money to us to open an F&B, to open a restaurant, a cafe, anything, and they didn't. But I don't know what happened that I just got the confidence again and I was like, let me do something solo, and that's when Daily happened. It took me a year, guys, to open it. I actually paid 10 months of rent. He gave me 2 months of fit out because I was constantly trying to arrange funds and figure it out and do a place that my city hadn't done before. And I'm so glad I did it because it is what it is now, and it's made me really happy.
Absolutely. And, going back to your point that both of you all made earlier about having something unique to offer customers is so important. So, Yash, please go ahead with that initial question that we asked about unexpected challenges.
So I'll give her something that these kids will relate to. I'm going to apologize to auntie sitting there with my unfiltered thing. How many of you all are in a hotel management course right now? Okay, most of you. So you are going to relate to this. My co-founder says that I have an elephant's memory. So my first day at hotel management in Goa, right? And all of you all are going to have really spiteful seniors in your college. There's an X amount of ragging that happens. Goa was just out of proportion in this case, right? And I remember one of my seniors asking me that, why did you join the hospitality industry? And you're like 18, you're naive, and you're like, I love interacting with people, and hence I did it, right? And his answer to me was, so then why didn't you become a prostitute? Right? Now, when you're 18 years old, these words really hit you, right? But I was also naive, and I just took it. But I tell this to everyone, I remember who that person is. And since that day, I've been like, I'll show you what I can achieve. I know what he's doing now, but I'm going to tell you all that there are going to be, in this industry specifically, 100 people who say worse things to you all. But just take it as part of the first couple of years that you all need to grind it out, right? Worse things happened to me when I was working for hotels, but I made friends that I will always count on. So that was like the first thing which I tell, because I can see. We've been through a lot. The Kamla Mill fire, right? I think that's the second time I've cried for my business. I literally sat outside and we were nothing. Like the golden years were all gone. Our top floor had caught fire. But the way the city or BMC reacted was just going and breaking restaurants down. So then it was just like, you feel that sense of defeatedness because we didn't do anything wrong. We just happened to be neighbors of someone who didn't follow the law. One, we were thankful at that time that no one in our team luckily was hurt, because it was a bad incident. Like it felt bad. So then it was like, to be honest, there's no motivation and inspiration that helps. It's just about coming in every day, like trying to mend one thing, hoping at some point they let us open again. So we started slow. Business was down. Everyone was blaming each other. So that was one. And then the second thing is something that I will never get over is during COVID, in the first month, we lost our co-founder to COVID. So Chef Lloyd passed away, right? Chef Lloyd was like a father figure to me, a mentor to me. And like he passed away March 25th, 2020. All businesses were shut. You've lost a co-founder. It doesn't get worse than that. So I feel like there are going to be challenges that get thrown at you. Some of them you just like take one step at a time. Have like a good support system around you, I would always say. But don't expect that it's going to be like, I know a lot of hotel management students will come into this industry. 90% of my friends are not even in the industry who did hotel management. But the 10% of us who are like just enjoying, maybe we don't have the luxuries in life, but we enjoy what we do every single day. Like she was saying, she was in the kitchen at 5 a.m. in the morning. That's crazy. So it is going to be hard. And just because you go to an international institute, it doesn't become easier at all, right? In India, I feel we are so used to lesser productivity levels. When you go study at an LCB and you're working at a cafe, you are maybe 1 out of 4 people who run the entire cafe serving 100 people. Whereas in India, it'll be like 25 people running a cafe serving 100. So I feel grass is always greener, but education helps and gives you a lot of confidence. I always say that when you go to an educational institute, for me, I learned more from the students who are next to me, just understanding what their experiences were, because it was going to an international institute, you get to the different cultures that you are going to be soaking up. Yeah, and that helps like tremendously. I think the sense of confidence I got after Cornell was much better. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did, absolutely. And, hospitality has its own twists and turns, you know. It's every day is an adventure, and you need to be prepared to go out there and face it. You know, you were talking about education, Yash. In fact, that was another, you know, broad theme that I wanted to touch upon. Now, you've studied at Le Cordon Bleu in London. You've studied at Cornell in the US, and of course at IHM Goa earlier. How has your education shaped you, and what do you see as some of the key differences between, say, studying here versus abroad?
So I'll go first. Honest, there are a couple of institutes in India I feel which are doing a phenomenal job. One, I wasn't in one of them, but I didn't know I wasn't one of them when I was doing the course, right? So I got out of the course with this exceptional confidence that I've done really well, and I'm like going to like kill it. And I started like, so the joke being, I got a campus recruitment to work at this hotel. And I asked we used to have a career counselor in the college saying that, I don't know which department should I start working. And this guy, and I used to always get, like, I was a bookworm. So I was like top 3 rank, and I used to be like, that's the greatest thing I've ever done. So you know what the career counselor told me? He's like, Yash, you're a tall boy, so join the reception. Right? And this is again, I go back, I always said, I was naive. I did join the reception, right? So I started working at this hotel. I did this for a month. And I'm very energetic still. And I hated just standing doing nothing, right? So luckily, again, like the stars aligned and this hotel got supremely busy. And I was the most junior person in the team. So they're like, that restaurant's busy, go and help them. So I went there, and that was my foray into restaurants, and I've not left it for 18 years, right? But going back to the question, the difference between here and educational institute abroad, I feel abroad even more, the onus is on the student to match up. Here there is forceful, like, ye karna hai, that stupid journal needs to be filled up. But there the onus is for you to think why you've been made to think this. But there's not going to be a structure in place where you have to do it. Now, if you've not done it, you'll fail. But here, like, there is, I feel like, certain numbers that need to be filled up by some institute. And hence, they force feed information to you. I feel there, it's the onus is on you to grasp the information and use it in your own thing. So one of the things I really loved at Cornell was working on a lot of projects within teams. So we used to be broken down into teams of 4 and working on different case studies and just having that conversation around it instead of just you filling up something in a journal. And like my Cornell course was nothing to do with culinary. So ours was either, like, we had different students joining who wanted to change their career. So I joined when I was 26 years old. The average age of our class was 30. So we had someone who had worked with Mayor Giuliani's office in New York who wanted to come in and change us. We had an architect. Samir, who's my co-founder, used to be a banker. So there was a good mix. So when you were made to work in a case study of 4, and the case study could have been about Caribbean cruise, some issues they are having with service, it's so great to hear someone else's point of view, because when we work from hotel management, we are like a horse with a blinder on. Like, we only look in one direction. So I feel that's what I think international education helps, is that exposure to, like, different cultures and different answers.
Awesome.
I think that there's very little to add for me, but when I studied abroad, there was one difference, which was just the fact, the kind of equipment and produce that we were given. Also the fact that I feel internships are way easier abroad. If you even go into, what I did was I went into a restaurant and I requested to meet the chef. And I told him, I'm, like, studying in so-and-so, chef, can I come in every day for 2-3 hours, please? Can I shadow you? I'll do anything. And chef was like, yeah, start coming in from tomorrow. Just the support I feel that they give to young minds, the fact that you're learning from using the best equipment. I mean, you don't always need that in your kitchen, but it'll always give you just an upper hand that you have that information, the knowledge. And like he said, diverse communities. You learn so much about different cultures. You also sort of come into your own. I feel that exposure really helps. So I don't think I would trade my LCB experience in, like, for anything. But at the same time, I always do encourage people that please, please do train in the kitchens, even before joining school, so that you know that this is actually what you want to do. A lot of times you'll have like a different idea, oh, chef school is going to be this and I'm going to do that. Once you train, you at least know what a commercial kitchen is. And once you know that and you want to do it, then please, culinary school should be something that you guys do.
Absolutely. So the exposure is so interesting. And one more thing that I've observed about courses abroad, that they tend to be a little bit more modular in nature, thereby allowing a student to choose specific modules and customize their learning journey. Whereas institutes in India, while they're really fantastic, they tend to have a fixed curriculum where every student is following the same path. So that's again very interesting. The world today we live in is absolutely global. You have customers from abroad traveling into India. You have Indians traveling abroad more than ever. And it's a really porous world. So being exposed to different nationalities and cultures is so important, shaping you as a hospitality and culinary professional. And Yash, I'm sure your time abroad would have exposed you to a certain standard of F&B service. And therefore, when you come back, you want to make sure that your outlets are also delivering that level of service. Talking about service and talking about really doing a good job, just one last question I want to kind of ask both of you is, when you're delivering that fantastic experience, how do you really manage to attract and retain good talent? And when you're looking at hiring new talent, what is it that you look for, in new recruits?
So I also wanted to add to what she was saying about culinary school. Like I say it, like when I was at IHM Goa, I wish my professors were inspiring enough, because I feel I would have joined the kitchen, but it was just something that was never really given enough importance. But even after you do LCB, right, a lot of LCB, everyone knows what LCB is, we won't talk about it, but it's a great institute. But you're not going to, after graduating, your life is not MasterChef Australia. Like that's a core reality we all need to wake up to, is just because we went to an international institute, the doors don't suddenly open. It's not like the IIT of India. It's not, job prospects don't go through the roof. It's what she said. It's about getting into a kitchen and working your ass off after that. So the same thing the reason I'm saying that is, for us at Bombay Canteen, we always said service does not mean servitude, right? When I say servitude, it means we don't need to be yes sir, no sir. In India, we are so used to having the way we treat domestic help at home, right? The respect needs to be there, inter-respect needs to be there, and that's something we stand for at all our restaurants, that we are here to give hospitality, right? So when it comes to looking at talent, one of the core things I look at personally is personality. I need someone who will come in. I don't need someone to talk in English. If you can convey a dish in Hindi, Marathi, it makes sense. I'll give you the difference. So I say it. So we had a dish in Bombay Canteen called as Arbi Tuk. Okay, Arbi Tuk is a Sindhi dish, right? We had created our own version of it. If you were serve that dish in a hotel, the way someone would describe it is, it has colocasia. Does anyone know what colocasia is? What is it? It is Arbi, basically, right? So they would say, oh, it has colocasia, it has tomato, it has onions, and a little bit of cilantro, right? But I can read that on the menu, right? But that's because that person on the other side has been trained like that robot. Whereas if I am serving it, I want someone to say that, it's our version of the Arbi Tuk. You're going to get nice crispy textures because we've double fried the Arbi. There's a little bit of tanginess coming from a tamarind yogurt emulsion on it. We use a rat tail radish, which is in season right now, to give a crunchiness on top of it. It'll remind you of a delicious sev puri. Now, by doing that, you've already created an image in the picture, an image in the mind of the consumer, and that
I'm
person.
tempted to have it right now.
Exactly, right? So that's what I want. Now, when someone steps into Bombay Canteen, O Pedro, Veronica's, do they have it? No. But they need to be able to get there. So same for the kitchen. Like, we've had mad amount of career changes we employ in the kitchen because there's a sense of drive they come with, right? It is not a high-paying job. It is a very strenuous job. We just moved the entire company from the dishwashers to the valets to executives to a 5-day work week. Now, if I say this in New York and something, they'll be like, that's nothing. But to do that in India is a huge thing, But it took us time. We had actually done this pre-COVID, and we were on a trial basis, but then COVID just destroyed our lives. So going back to your question, I feel it's more personality driven. There needs to be a drive. There needs to be an groundedness to a certain level. And for different brands, we are picking up different people, right? Enthu Cutlet needs completely different kind of people. Whereas Bombay Sweet Shop, where we say we are creating India's next sweet revolution. The kind of people I need there are people who maybe worked at an LCB in a chocolate factory, but want to really get into Indian sweets. So depends brand wise, but end of the day needs to come in with certain values. That's it. I tell people, you can't teach honesty. If that person walking in is not honest, you can't teach it. So there are certain things we look for, but it has skill wise, when it comes to the kitchen, you need someone at different stages to know different skills. Whereas for FOH, other than the bar, it's more about just personality for me.
I think adding to that, I was speaking to a couple of students outside where I was telling them, when I recruit, I actually do not look at the education at all. If it's a fresher, then like Yash said, I look at the personality, I look at the grit and the determination, only because we have really long hours. And of course, it is not a very high paying job. Only when it comes to the kitchen, I don't ever ask them questions. I'm like, can you go into the kitchen and make me something? Even if it's a fresher and if they want to learn, I'm like, make me something you would love to eat. Maybe at 4 a.m., maybe at 8 p.m., anything. It can even be their version of Maggie. But let's see what they can do. As long as they don't cover it in mayo, I'm all good. So, so it's just, let's see what they can do, what they can create, because sometimes, and actually most of the times, I see my team ends up making way better versions of dishes. So I'll like give them exhibit A, guys, this is what I'm thinking, this is my version, I'll draw it on a whiteboard, I'll discuss the components. And then the next day I'll see my team, like they'll be making variations that probably I couldn't think of, and it's so much better than me. So it's just about people who like to think and who will get their hands dirty and really get into the kitchen and work. My baristas and my front of house, a lot of them have come in as freshers. We've trained them. And yes, I hate this yes or no sir culture that we do have. So we are trying to change that, at least in Calcutta. We are trying to make it like a more friendly neighborhood joint where everybody comes, you actually know the names of your servers. Most of them are friends, you're giving fist bumps while leaving, while paying the bill. That's a very, very new culture in my city at least. This was not something that was there. Everything was yes sir, no sir. You have to take the dish back if you don't like, if I don't like it, etc., etc. So baby steps, but we are making headway there. So I think that's the kind of format we are sticking to, where our team is really happy and we're being able to retain our core, and that's very, very important, because you exist because of your team. If your team's not there, then you're not going to exist. No restaurant can run on the founder. It's your team that runs it, and you help them to run it. It's actually them who's, doing the true work. We are just there to facilitate. That's what I feel.
Awesome. So true leadership is, letting people help do their job and, being an enabler and having that vision, making sure that you're communicating what you stand for and letting the team actually execute that. Finding right people is so important. This has been a really fantastic discussion. I've really enjoyed it. Let's give a big round of applause to our panel.